Hello and welcome. I just read the scariest book ever written, and I want to tell you what my experience was like reading that book, which was House of Leaves. Now, I'm going to do my best to not have any spoilers in the first part of this video. Or you're just one of those psychos that doesn't care about spoilers before you're reading a book. Wait till the second half of this video and I will be dropping those spoiler bombs. Now, how did I find this book in the first place? I literally just Googled, what is the scariest book in the world or ever written? And House of Leaves, surprisingly, was the first one to come up. I was intrigued by that, of course, but I was also intrigued by the cover, which I know you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but just that alone was so interesting with House of Leaves that I couldn't control myself. I had to read this book. Now, was it really the scariest book ever written? No. At least not how you would typically think of a horror book, in my opinion. But if you've ever wanted to feel like you're on a psychedelic trip while reading a book and not take any drugs, this book is the book for you. It is that type of horror novel that just totally wraps your mind around this very interesting thing, which is 4 stories inside of one. And it's just the weirdest thing that I can think of within a book, but so cool. What are all these stories about? It is about our narrator, Johnny, who finds a book, and that book is about a movie that may or may not exist. And that movie is about Will and Karen, who you're going to follow along with in their house. And that house is larger on the inside than it is on the outside. Now, don't worry if that doesn't make sense to you right now. It shouldn't, but stay till the end of the video and it probably will. A lot of people find this book super difficult to read. For me, it was easy to read. Maybe that's just a little bit of a sign of how messed up my mind is, but that's okay. I think you can get really easily wrapped up in trying to solve this book. You can't solve it. That's the purpose of it. Or maybe you can, I don't know. But I just decided not to solve it. I wanted to read it page by page. Now, in this case, page by page is not so easy to do in this particular book because the author actually takes you on a physical adventure throughout this book. You're actually turning the book, flipping the book. You'll find yourself seeing the words shrink to just 1 word per page, and all of a sudden you're flipping the pages faster and faster and faster, and it just is this bizarre experience. But if you read it page by page like a normal book, towards the end of it, it will begin to kind of make sense. I think a lot of people get stuck on trying to figure out, like, why is this page that way? Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Flip to the next page and the next page and the next page and turn the book and warp into this crazy scene that is House of Leaves. Now, just on these reading experiences alone and turning the book and all those things, I found this book incredibly fun to read. And I think a lot of people miss out on that if you don't get through the first 100 pages. From page 1 to the book saying this is not for you to page 100, it kind of gets a little dry, a little confusing, and it's very hard to grasp. But you have to keep pushing along, because when you get to the first portion of this book where all of a sudden you start turning it and just being engulfed in the story, you could burn through 50 or 100 pages in like 5 minutes. And all of a sudden the 700-page book that you start off by saying, how in the hell am I ever going to finish this thing, becomes super easy to read because of the large chunks that you get past very quickly. So keep reading. Now, forewarning about one of our characters, who's kind of the main character, Johnny, it gets a little steamy, okay? So if you're not interested in reading a pseudo weird erotic novel thrown out in there. Maybe pass those sections by, you'll know which ones they are. But in my opinion, as we'll learn later, it's kind of for a purpose. Now, what I found super interesting about Johnny's character in particular is that it reminded me so much of American Psycho. Whether you're reading the book or watching the movie, Patrick Bateman's character kinda is Johnny. That's how I envisioned it. Now, a lot of people were like, oh, he's just your crappy character that was poorly written. I just want to pass the scenes when he comes on. Think of it like American Psycho. If you look at it in that like psychotic way, it actually ends up kind of working. So just remember that. And ultimately, what I found fascinating about the book was how well the story began to flow. You would never assume that this story would flow by the beginning of the book. But as you continually read it, you're finding your mind just like understanding what the author is doing, and all of a sudden the story just starts flowing. And in my case, I wanted to read page after page after page. I wanted to keep going to figure out what the story was. And it was one of the most expertly laid out books I have ever read. It really was. And I know a lot of people don't feel that way. Sometimes with House of Leaves, I found in looking online that you're in the group where you either love it or you hate it. It's one of the two, and it's very, very hard to find somebody that's in the middle where it's like, it was an okay book. I think if you're on the love it crowd, you really love it. If you're on the hate it crowd, you stopped at 100 pages and just never read it again. Fun fact, this is one of the #1 books recommended on Reddit. So I don't know what that tells you, but it's kind of an interesting thing. Should we get on to some spoilers maybe soon? So after all of this, is there any light at the end of this thing? Any light at the end of the tunnel? No. All right, from here on out, spoiler notice in full effect. First off is the house. It's a space that simply does not obey reality. The inside of the house is bigger than the outside of the house by a fraction of an inch, and that slowly grows. Hallways start appearing where they should not, and a staircase appears within that descends into darkness that never ends. There's just nothing. That's it. Nothing in the center of the house. A massive, cold, light-absorbing void. No monsters, no explanations, just endless darkness. And Will Navidson is not trying to survive the house. He's trying to understand it. And the biggest problem with that is it drives him into madness. And that obsession that he has with understanding the house costs him everything. But the big transition in this book isn't Will's, it's Johnny's. He's not just reading the overall story, it's infecting him. All of that crazy, cool guy, erotica stuff that started out in the beginning of the book fully dissolves towards the end. And the more he focuses on it, the more the book consumes him and he begins to fall apart. Hallucinations, not understanding what's going on, and just really ultimately spiraling out of control. Really, we don't even know if Johnny is even the one narrating, or if maybe the entire story itself, Will, Johnny, Zampano, everything was actually made up by Johnny's mother, who currently resides in a mental institution. The act of reading House of Leaves is just an experiment, and really, you are the subject. You feel lost because Johnny feels lost. You feel obsessed because Will feels obsessed. And this book is slowly turning you into a character, and that's it. No explanations. Johnny doesn't get saved, and you're just left along with him. And that's exactly how the book wants it. Honestly, after reading it, this book just feels like a psychological endurance test. But if you're the type of person that just keeps reading anyways, this book will fuck you up.